The Cannabis Conversation. A European perspective on the emerging legal cannabis industry.
Welcome to the Cannabis Conversation with the New Society, where I explore the new legal cannabis industry by speaking to the professionals that are helping to shape it. On today's show, I've got Kirck Allen, who is the CEO and co-founder of Amberstalk, which is a branded hemp products distributor. He's also a founding member of the British Hemp Association. And Kirk's on the show today to talk to us about the wonderful world of hemp and to give us an idea of some of the thousands of amazing uses it has. Welcome, Kirk. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thanks, Anush. Thanks for having me in the podcast.
Pleasure. Absolute pleasure. Why don't we kick off in our kind of customary way of talking a bit about your background, I guess, and how you came to start Amberstalk and your journey.
I started my hemp journey in 2016, around November, at the very end of the year. I joined a business competition at Kingston University, where I was studying law and business. And in this competition, we had to start a business in about 24 hours. Where my partner in the competition told me, "Kirk, have you ever heard of hemp before?" I said, "No, what is that?" And he told me, "You know what weed is, right?" I was like, "Yes." Well, basically, hemp is like the distant cousin of marijuana. I was like, "Okay, and you can build houses from it." Okay, that's interesting. And he shows me a YouTube clip of mixing hemp shivs with limestone and water, and you can come up with a material very similar to concrete, which was known as Hempcrete. It was like 3 times to 4 times stronger than concrete. It was 3 times lighter, carbon negative, pest resistant, waterproof, fireproof, and it's just so good for insulation. And I was just blown away. I said, okay, we should take this as an idea for the competition and see what we can do with it. And became second place out of the 35 teams that was competing in this competition all over the world. Since that competition, I knew that the winning team was not going to take this forward as a business idea. And I said, I'm just not going to give up on it and start researching it by myself. So every other day, every other night, I was technically almost so distracted about this hemp research that I forget to do my essays for my law courses. So
Don't want to worry about law, it's too boring.
And so it's also a 360 because I'm studying law, and technically speaking, I don't know if I'm breaking the law just reading about it. So yeah, I read more and more about hemp, and eventually around January the year after, I collaborated with 3 other students at that time and brought them to my flat. We had KFC and chocolate cake in the living room, and we just came up with ideas as, let's start a hemp company. And okay, cool, that's basically how it started. We didn't know what the company was about. We just said it would be cool to have one. And the rest is history, really.
That's great. I mean, getting you straight out of university is a really good thing. So cool. Okay, it's great that you sort of started when you were sort of finishing up your course. And what exactly is Amberstalk all about, and what are you up to now?
Well, the funny thing about coming up with a name, so we came up with 3 names. The first one was Hempstalk, but we didn't want to focus on hemp too much because we know that there are other sustainable crops out there. The next one was Goldstalk, but it sounded like a bank. You know, we didn't want to be a company that just focused on money. And the last one was Amberstalk. And we came up with a story over time, as we said, maybe we can change the name a little bit later on, but it just stuck. And you must have known about the Jurassic Park, you know, the first film, wherein in that first film they had this mosquito trapped in an amber. And what these scientists did is they extracted the DNA from that mosquito and turned it into hundreds and thousands of different dinosaurs. So we wanted to do something similar to hemp, since it's a very old crop. We want to extract the best bits of hemp and turn it into hundreds and thousands of different products. Yeah. And amber really represented impact. the stalk really represented sustainability and growth. So Amberstalk means impact, sustainability, growth.
Perfect. Really nice. That's a nice story as well about how you came to the name. And actually, before we move on to the next bit, you're focusing more on the sort of hemp food side of things. Is that right?
Yes. We focus mostly on seeds, oils, and powders. We have one of the highest protein products in the market today. On average, we actually have 20% more hemp protein than what's on the shelf, even in Holland & Barrett. And the taste is completely different.
Yes, I can vouch for that. It's delicious.
Golden and nutty. And it's the same thing with our hemp seed oil, Gold, which is extra virgin. It's very similar to a rapeseed oil because it's quite golden. You can actually use that for cooking now. And we believe that these three founding seeds, oils, and powders, we can produce them into other products like milk, potentially even the oils for cosmetics and skincare. But we also work with different other companies in collaboratively, from CBD companies, hemp paper companies like Quintessential, and also hemp plastic. So we touch almost every single part of the plant. Since 2016, 2017, when you start a company, you don't know what to do. You kind of try to touch every single industry and see where you fit in. So
yeah. It's a good way to start, isn't it? Particularly in this very undefined space that we're in. You have to kind of go out and try a few things, I think, before you refine what you're doing. But in terms of just getting to the main part of the show and sort of talking about some of the uses, because I really want to showcase those, it would be great if you could sort of just wow us with how amazing hemp is. So let's start off with where you're sort of focusing your attentions on food and ingestibles.
Let's start with literally the hemp seed, because there's different parts of the plants. So I would usually start with the seed first, because the seed contains a perfect balance of omega-3 and 6. It's a 3-to-1 ratio that it is known for helping, let's say, blood circulation, improves immune system health, cognitive function, and a lot of nutritional benefits. And if you actually see the nutritional value for hemp and compared it to, let's say, fish, fish contains omega-3, omega-6. Hemp has about 6 times more omegas than fish. So you can imagine that's like 6 times. So it's way more beneficial. And also, the most popular thing about hemp that's really turning it into a actual superfood is its protein content. Through our sort of research with my company, we found that on average, let's say, chicken, beef, or pork within 100 grams, on average has about 21%, 22% protein. So, that's 22 grams within a 100-gram meal.
Yeah.
Hemp can contain between 30, even up to 60, 70, which is 3 times more than chicken.
And that's from the seeds, the hemp seeds.
Yeah, it's from the hemp seeds.
Yeah.
And that's 3 times more than chicken, beef, or pork.
Wow.
We need proteins in our diet in order for us to really function. And, if a steak meal, people say, oh my gosh, that's filled with protein. It's actually mostly filled with fiber and fat. Hemp proteins are much easier to digest than other plant-based products. Right. So it's digestible products. Another thing, maybe a really cool thing about hemp is that it's also good for, I wouldn't say hunger suppressant, but if you feel hungry, you can actually eat some hemp seeds and you'll feel
satiated.
The Buddha, for example, ate hemp seeds during his fasting, or just to survive, just to keep him going. He just ate hemp seeds. So it's been used throughout time that hemp seeds can be turned into so many things, from the oils to the proteins.
So the oils. So in essence, you can crush the seeds into a powder that can be used in a number of different ways. What about the oils? And actually, what would be good is there any CBD in those
things? I always say there are traces of CBD. Yeah. There's no way you can say that there might be none. But usually in hemp seeds, it's quite low traces of CBD, because CBD mostly comes from the flower and from the fiber. and it requires a different process in order to get the CBD out. I normally say, what is CBD? Everybody asks me, and it says, it's like the vitamin C within an orange. It's just one one compound within the whole plant. But for the seed itself, it's cold pressed from the hemp seed.
Yeah.
So when you press the seed, you produce you can produce different types of oil from it, like either green or gold, depending on, again, the pressure that you put on, because when you press the seed, it creates friction, and depending on the amount of friction you produce, you create heat. And when you create heat, that's how it sort of produces that oily, nutty taste, like a nutty taste. And then the byproduct is the proteins. So the cake that you get from after pressing it, whatever is left is the protein cake. And it's then, there's different methods you can improve with that, like milling it, sieving it, and, refining the protein so that, you can go up from literally 30% protein to 50% protein, because the more you isolate almost the protein content, the higher the protein value.
Yeah. That's great in terms of food. I'm sure there's tons of other stuff, but maybe we talk a bit now about hemp as a material. Can you explain what Hempcrete is?
So Hempcrete is the mixture of, let's say, a binder, hemp shivs, and water. Normally the binder is with limestone, but if you mix it together, it's like a woody type of material that hardens.
It looks like Weetabix.
It looks like Weetabix, like literally a white box of Weetabix. And when I saw it for the first time, I was just blown away. I was tapping on it and was like, wow, this is hard.
Yeah.
It's a type of material that is good for carbon sequestration. So, let's say if your home was built from hemp house, let's say you can build literally like one home from an acre or 2 acres of hemp. You can build your home from hemp.
Yeah.
And if your home was built from hemp, let's say even in Europe, what it does is it absorbs carbon dioxide from the air, stores it within the walls of the house.
Wow.
And it becomes like an insulator that traps heat inside, stores it within the walls. And that's what basically sort of hardens the material. Imagine if you can cut off your heating costs in the winter, because you can just have one heater on, and it just heats up the whole house.
Yeah.
And in the winter, in the summer, it actually becomes a breathable material. But it's getting popular now as a sustainable material or replacement. And the thing that blew me about Hempcrete back in the day is, from what I've seen, from what I've heard, you can actually break down a hemp house and reuse the same materials to build another one.
Right.
And since it's a biomass material, you can also sort of composite and turn into fertilizer to grow hemp again.
Yeah.
So you can use your house to go.
So your house is truly recyclable.
Yeah.
And biodegradable.
Biodegradable house.
Yeah. Incredible. So, just to recap, so we've talked about Hempcrete as a construction material, but also hemp can be used in plastics and paper and various other applications as well.
Yes. I think a good topic to get into would be hemp fabrics.
Yes, fabric, actually. We'll touch on it because I'm conscious of time. But yes, hemp, that's probably what a lot of people have, a kind of out-of-date notion of hemp as a kind of hippie material. But it's been used as a fabric a lot as well. Is that? Yeah.
No, it's again, hemp just knows no bounds, as they say. It's just endless. There's like 10,000 plus uses, and everybody's coming up with a brand new idea for it every single day.
Yeah.
But I would just quickly say that the fashion industry is one of the largest contributors to the climate. For example, a T-shirt, a shirt that we're wearing, uses about 300 gallons, 300 gallons or something like that. Like a lot of water,
right?
Massive amounts of water just for a single T-shirt, and then and to grow it uses up like a lot of land, because you have to cut down trees and cut down areas. I think it was at 680 liters per shirt is used for hemp, and then just for a single T-shirt for cotton is about 2,700
liters.
Wow, 2,700 liters for a single T-shirt.
Wow, that's a lot.
Cotton uses 26% of the world's pesticides as well, and it grows 8 to 9 months. Compare that to hemp, 3 to 4 months, requires no pesticides or herbicides, produces more fiber, per acre, about 300 kilos worth of fiber, let's say on average, whereas cotton only produces, let's say, 50 to 100.
Yeah, and absorbs more CO2.
Absorbs more CO2. An acre of hemp, for people who doesn't know how big an acre is, let's say it's the size of a football field, can absorb about 15 tons of CO2. Whereas a tree, let's say a 10-year-old tree, right? 10-year-old forest, an acre of a 10-year-old forest can only absorb about 2.5 tons of CO2. 2.5 tons versus 15 tons.
So that's 6 times as much.
Yeah.
Wow.
So hemp can absorb 6 times as much, and we're only talking about 3 to 4 months.
Yeah. That's amazing. So just before we come on to the sustainability angle, which is big, the last area was sort of fuel and energy, because I always find that really interesting. How is hemp used in that respect?
It's one of the most popular stories, I would say, about hemp and fuel is Henry Ford.
Yeah.
When Henry Ford built his car, a portion of it was made from hemp. He also used hemp seed oils to fuel the car.
As the fuel, wow.
Hemp is a biomaterial. Again, it's like at the end of this biomass. So you can turn that biomass into biofuel. I think there's some research onto this about turning hemp into something like ethanol or something, or gas. But it's a type of gas that doesn't emit the poisonous gases that we have today when you put it into fuels in cars. And it produces also, potentially could produce a lot more energy as well. But it was just found out recently that if you used hemp fibers instead, that if you burn hemp fibers, because it's carbon based, in like at 200 degrees, you can come up with a very similar material to graphene, plant based, and it's much cheaper.
That's much cheaper, right?
Way cheaper. Can actually beat graphene in terms of energy storage.
Yeah.
And it's not just about energy storage; it's also energy discharge, because when you store energy is one thing, but you need to release energy, and hemp is found to be a good conductor as well.
Wow.
So it's a crazy thing that imagine in the future your computers, your phones could be powered by plants.
It sounds far-fetched, but those are the things that I'm reading about hemp as well, literally how incredible it is. And I guess, to tie it all up is the sustainability aspect of it. So we've talked a bit about CO2, and you've mentioned briefly about pesticides, and that it basically needs less pesticides because it's a weed and it grows anywhere. And what about water? I think you also mentioned. What's the deal with water compared to other crops, for example?
Again, since hemp needs for the first 6 weeks it grows on average, it needs water because it needs to break down through the soil. It's like a baby plant. It needs just enough moisture to break through the soil for the first 6 weeks as it's growing. But after that, hemp requires little to no water because the hemp roots tap in so deep in the earth that it can reach nutrients that other crops can't reach. It is even said that the hemp roots, the depth of the hemp roots is as deep as its height above ground. So imagine that.
Yeah.
So it's just as tall as what's beneath.
It goes low.
I mean, people in the U.S. who grow tobacco, for example, grow hemp first, and then they grow tobacco because the hemp plants creates the tunnel system for other plants to grow later on, and it's a rotational crop, and it grows. It helps you grow even more yield.
Yeah.
So I mean, I've read some articles about people who grow hemp and then they grew like potatoes and watermelons, and they had a lot more yield and much bigger sizes as well because hemp broke
all
down.
of the work it does underground. Yeah.
Because also the roots, once you cut down the hemp plants, the roots stay intact, but basically releases nitrogen or something within the soil, which is needed for growing. It makes, again, with all the properties of hemp, like its phytoremediation ability.
What does that actually mean?
So phytoremediation means that it's the ability to absorb toxins from the soil. In the UK today, there's a lot of articles saying that we have about 40 years left, for cultivation, because we've been using a lot of pesticides and herbicides. So, using hemp's ability to phytoremediate, you can actually absorb the toxins like from the soil, cleaning it up, and it stores it within the bast fibers of the plant.
Right.
You can store it, you can clean up your soil, and on top of that, like what we were saying, it cleans up the air as well.
Yeah.
So it cleans up, the sky, cleans up the ground, utilizes less water, and it grows 3 to 4 months. And you can rotate it as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
And turn it into all the other products that you can come up with. It's really silly that
It's
it's
crazy,
still good to be true.
It's crazy, isn't it? When you and I talked about it at Product Earth, all of the talks were about how incredible this crop is, and you tied it all up there really nicely together.
And the thing about it is, like, in the industry, we called it as the God plant. The God plant, like probably a gift from God, or the mother of all plants. And, when I started hemp, it was really about, the impact it can make, and utilizing hemp as an opportunity to make change. With all the stuff that's happening right now with Extinction Rebellion, with the Greta Thunberg movement, and, with David Attenborough and all that stuff, we need something that can help impact the environment, produce all this other things that we need, replace the plastics, replace the paper, instead of cutting down trees. A single plant is the single solution. Us in the hemp industry, we know that this is the sustainable solution, because it not only creates a solution for climate change, like cleaning up the CO2 emissions and cleaning up our soil, it provides jobs, it provides opportunities. When I was saying about, the 15 tons of CO2 within an acre, we found out that also within an acre of hemp, you can produce, let's say, 1,000 bottles of 50 ml hemp seed oil. 1,000 bottles.
Right.
So if 1,000 people used hemp seed oil, potentially 1,000 people can change the world.
Yeah.
And that's powerful, because when you ask yourself, what if you can change the world just by eating?
Yeah.
Just by utilizing a certain material, whether it's a piece of notebook that you use to write your notes in, or the business cards that you use as an entrepreneur, or the plastics that you produce is made from one single material. It's just crazy to say that I'm not saying that hemp is the only solution, or people say it's the gateway drug, but I think it's the gateway to sustainability. If you can change the world just by using hemp, why not use it?
Yeah, I mean, we could talk about the economics separately, but it is that creating that demand that means that someone grows an acre of hemp for all those collateral benefits. I'm going to move on now to our last question, if that's all right.
Sure.
And my traditional last question is, what did your parents say when you told them you were moving into cannabis? But I suppose it's more hemp for you, really.
Well, they were not obviously embracing it. They always thought that, does this get me high and all this stuff every single
The
time,
usual stuff.
even now. And they didn't support the idea, obviously. I come from Asia. Just for the listeners, I'm, British Filipino. And, in Asia, to do anything with, technically speaking, the word cannabis is like taboo. It's a drug. It's are you doing something illegal? Stuff like this. So it took them a while to basically see, but over time, because I built relationships with these leaders, and I actually brought them into one place when we had the hemp party in July, they started to see that, wait a second, this is more than just a fad. Last August, I managed to bring them to the farm. I brought my mom, my dad, my grandmother, my sisters. All of them were skeptical about this thing. And one of my friends pointed out Kirk. somebody put dirt on their shoes for you. The person who basically was controversial, the people who said that, it's a silly idea, you're not going to make money from this, or, it's usually your family that criticize you first, and then now they start to embrace it.
Yeah.
My mom wants to start her own hemp scarf,
Right.
with her, because we have a fashion brand in the Philippines, and my grandmother loves hemp tea, for example, and it's great because now you start to see that over the last few years we've been doing this to actually flip the idea, because my biggest dream and my biggest goal in life is to change the world. As simple as that.
Small dream then.
It's a small dream, but it's a small dream, but the question is how you do that. And I said to myself, the way I can do that is to give people the power to change the world. I can change the world by giving people the power to change it. And how do I do that? Just use hemp.
Yeah, that is a beautiful way to end the show, and I love it. It's a true entrepreneurial story where you dropped out of college to pursue your dream. So well done, you, mate.
Jobs.
We're all very glad that you're investing your time in this space. So thank you very much for joining me, Kirk.
Thank you, Anush. Thank you so much.
Thanks for joining us for that. That was great to speak to Kirk there. He's a great example of a young entrepreneur in this space. As I mentioned a while back, I find hemp endlessly fascinating. I think the sustainability angle is far too compelling now. And I think the main problem around hemp is just ignorance. Not enough people know about exactly what it can do. So hopefully this episode helped a bit in that area. This week we've got the ACI launch, Friday the 8th of November coming up. The ACI is the Association for the Cannabinoid Industry, which is being launched by the Centre for Medicinal Cannabis. Some of you may notice I did a little video panel for those guys last week, which was a lot of fun. I also officially launched my consultancy business called New Leaf Insights. Some of you may have seen that on LinkedIn. New Leaf Insights is a strategic advisory firm helping companies and investors understand, enter and succeed in the cannabis space. So if you need any help in that area, please drop me a line. We're speaking to some really interesting people at the moment, so it's all exciting times. Cool. All right, well, I'll leave you now and I'll see you next week. Cheers.